Thank you. Well, I came back. I missed you. What can I say? I came back because I wanted to give you an update, an idea of some of the newest distinctions that I've made. If you've been involved with my work at all, you probably have been exposed to some of the principles. How many of you read Unlimited Power? Say aye. If you did, I talked about some of the fundamental principles of living health there. And my goal in the first half of this session was really to get you to see you don't have to be afraid of bugs. You don't have to worry that in the middle of your New Year's, some commie bug is going to wreck your holiday. Okay? That it's really not how it works. You have all these, quote, bugs inside you right now. Germs are good. Germs are things that are useful. But if we create an environment where they proliferate to a tipping point that is imbalanced in your body, then you're going to have disease in your system because they're going to feed on the trash that we've brought there. And my biggest concern is that people live in fear. Somebody last night came to me and said, oh, I got a cold. I don't want to hug you. I said, get over here. It's like, I don't get sick and hugging and cough on me. I mean, it's not very polite. But that's not something to be worried about. And this is not the time for it. But those of you going to Mastery, we're going to talk about AIDS there. We're bringing one of the top AIDS specialists in the world there, Dr. Duesberg. He's one of the original retrovirus experts in the world. He's also UC Berkeley professor there. He's in the National Academy of Sciences, and he flat says, and has said for almost 10 years, and now he's catching on, that HIV is not the cause of AIDS, which sounds impossible, and people go crazy when they hear that. But we've spent $50 billion and roughly 15 years, and not one person has been helped. Not one. No one has been cured. Now, that shows you a hypothesis may not make sense. Now, Montagnier from the Pasteur Institute, who actually discovered the virus, it's a man named Gallo here in this country, took credit for it, and finally was sued 10 years later for scientific misconduct. But he's the guy we all hear HIV came from. But the man who really founded it now says HIV alone can't do it. There must be cofactors, but they don't know what the cofactors are. Cofactors are lifestyle, right? You are it. If we take care of our inner environment, if the inner environment is clean and vital and alive, we're going to have the energy we deserve, and we're not going to break down. So what I want you to get is that for starters. If we live in a polluted environment here, we're going to get sick, or we're at least going to get weak, right? Or if we're a really polluted environment, people mutate. Creatures mutate. Same thing is true inside of you. So what I thought maybe we'd do is show you a little bit of how we get to pollute our environment. And the way we get our environment polluted is we get out of balance. And you all know that. What happens during the holidays? If you weren't out of balance before, now you're totally out of balance. How many can relate to this? Say aye. And that balance is not just the balance that comes from, eating too much. It's all of the stresses we create inside of ourselves which innervate us. But they also do something else that I didn't understand at the level of science before. I understood it anecdotally. But science is now showing us some pretty extraordinary things that can help us to know precisely where we break down. Now, to give you an example, if you're looking for your life and trying to say, why would I get out of balance? What affects it? Think of what your body is. Your body is really this unique system that's working on basically electricity. It's electrical currents tied with magnetism. So think of it as electromagnetism that's actually running you. All the nerves of your body send signals through electricity. There are electrical signals, pulses of electricity. All the cells, all the organs of your body, when they're alive, to be healthy, you got to have healthy what? Come on. Cells. To have healthy cells, they got to be totally energetic. To be totally energetic, they have to have electrical power. What makes that electrical power happen is what we have is a delicate balance in our biochemistry. Chemistry makes the environment possible for electricity to be there. So you have a delicate balance there. Anything that's going to mess up that electrical balance is going to mess up your cells, is going to mess up your organs, is going to mess up your life. So if all these organs in our bodies have this need to send electricity, in fact, nerve signals are nothing but electrical pulses again, then what we got to figure out is what would mess that up. And then what we're going to do here this afternoon is walk you through the easy ways to make it so your inner environment is totally in balance on a consistent basis, even when you take it out of balance. This weekend took you out of balance. Many of you will leave here and get sick if you don't do what I tell you. How's that for a real direct approach? You will. I don't want to give you the voodoo curse, but many of you will, because what you've done is you've done the thing that creates breakdown in the body that you've probably been doing for years before you got here, but this weekend may have added to it, and that is the creation of acid. Acid in our systems creates a breakdown of the delicate balance in our biochemistry. Now, you turn on your television, you can't miss a million commercials or somebody comes on and says, I ate the whole thing. Alka-Seltzer, remember those old ads? Or now these days, they don't do that. Now they don't wait till after you're in pain. They go, look, I'm going to eat this Pepsin AC and then it won't hurt. And what is Pepsin AC and all these things? They are what? Antacids, okay? Now, why are we a culture? Tagamet, by the way, up until recently was the number one prescription drug in the world. Now there are more brands, so it's no longer number one by itself. But Tagamet is for stomach disorders. See, if we're eating so well, if we're so smart, how come we're taking all these antacids like they're coming out of our ears? The reason is because we live an acid lifestyle in modern times. Most industrialized nations live acid. Now, what creates acid in the system? Well, the first thing that creates acid is emotions, anger, resentment, frustration. You can take, and in fact, I encourage you to go by your local drugstore and get some of those little pH strips. Those pH strips, you probably have seen them. They're like yellow. You put it on your tongue for a few seconds so you can do it with your urine. And then you put it against colors, and it shows you how acid or alkaline you are. Now, why is this important? Let me clarify this first. Your body, to maintain this powerful, energetic, electrical current in you, has got to have a certain pH, a certain basis of what's called acid and alkaline in the system. It is as important as maintaining the temperature of your body. Your body has to stay at what temperature? Quick. 98.6. Well, here's the other number you better know. On a scale from 0 to 14, where 0 is pure acid, burn a hole in steel, and 14 is purely alkaline. Or another word for alkalinity is base, for those of you who have a scientific or chemistry background, right? The middle then, the balance would be 7. Our bodies need to be at 7.36. That's the ideal, which is more acid or more alkaline. Which one is it? Slightly what? It's slightly alkaline. Now, the portions of your body, like your stomach, has hydrochloric acid in it, and in that area, right, you're going to have more acid. But I'm talking about your blood. The blood, which is the river of life. What takes the oxygen everywhere? The blood. You know, what brings the nutrients? The blood. The blood is the basic source of everything. So your blood has got to be at 7.36. In fact, this is so important, guys, that if this figure were to vary 1 or 2 points, you would die instantly. Does anybody know why? Because what happens is it would change the chemistry where there'd be no electrical power. And imagine an electrical power plant that somebody unplugged. Everything stops. Your organs, your cells, everything shuts down. You're dead. That's how important alkalinity is to your body. Now, most people, though, are constantly testing the body's ability to do this. For example, we go to a cold environment, what does our body do? It compensates, right? It figures out what to do to try and speed up, try and get that warmth to the body so that we can survive. The same thing happens when you take in a lot of acidity in your body. Your body rushes to figure out how to deal with this. Now, the way the body deals with excess acid, and again, what brings acid to the body? Emotions is the first thing that most people never even think about. Remember when I asked you to call that person this weekend, which I know many of you didn't do because we gave you so much extra spare time? But I know you're going to do tonight because I know what a committed soul you are, or tomorrow morning at the latest. Because by doing that, whether you realize it or not, that anger you think about, or when you think you were victimized by somebody, that produces acid in your system. When you worry, I mean, how does it feel when you worry? What does your body feel like? Can you feel that kind of feeling inside your body, like something's churning? You're creating acids in the system. By the way, conversely, Norman Cousins, who, God bless his soul, an amazing man who was here in Los Angeles, right, teaching at UCLA. If you remember, he cured himself of disease by doing what? Through laughter therapy. He'd watch for 8 hours a day all these funny films that cracked him up, and he laughed his way back to health, because you can also, through your emotions, can you stimulate your immune system? Can you release positive endorphins, yes or no? So when you're talking about my lifestyle, I know people all the time who are so rigid about what they're going to eat, and they're stressed every moment about it. And I'm looking at them going, they are not going to be healthy because they're creating acid continuously, which, guess what acid does? It strips or weakens the electrical charges around red blood cells. So for example, and I'm getting a little technical, but please stay with me, and I think this will make sense for you. Here's a red blood cell. What does a red blood cell do? Carries what? Oxygen. So you got all these red blood cells in your body. And by the way, when you go to Mastery, you're going to see all of these, and those of you who are doing that. If you don't, I would go get a live blood test. Most people can get their blood. They get dried blood, and then they dye the blood. So you never see what your blood really looks like. You get some test that measures numbers as opposed to seeing what's really there. So here are these red blood cells. Blood cells, in order to function, have a certain biochemistry, and in order to do that, to have electrical charges. The outside of a blood cell has a negative charge. The reason it has a negative charge is it keeps the blood cells from doing what? Anybody know? Sticking together. If the blood cells stick together, what's going to happen? Yeah, they're going to suddenly go through the bloodstream more slowly, through the body more slowly, so you're going to get less oxygen. All these little red blood cells got to make it all the way down to little capillaries. Some places they have to go one at a time. So all of a sudden, imagine you got your body full of sludge. And by the way, that's how most people feel. They sludge through life. Because if you see the red blood cells, they're all clumped together. Now, what happens is the inside of your red blood cell has a positive charge. So when acid comes along, you have an acid diet, which I'm going to talk about also, acid emotions, acid lifestyle. The acid comes by and it mitigates, it strips or weakens this charge, sometimes takes it completely away. So what do you think these cells start to do? They start to clump together. As that happens, your energy goes through the floor. But that's not the only problem. These cells start to weaken. Does that make sense? They're not as strong as they need to. And as the environment becomes more and more acidic, they not only weaken, but they die. When they die, they release their own acids into the bloodstream. So now you're compounding it. Now remember the example I gave you of pouring water in a glass and you keep pouring and pretty soon it overflows? Well, when you keep pouring acid in the system and it starts destroying cells more rapidly than your body's used to, all that acid builds up to the point where now the environment is really polluted. And what got worse, you basically have negative momentum. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Till pretty soon you don't know why you have all these aches and pains. Aches and pains are acid. It's a lack of oxygen and acid. And you can find it in any part of your body. So what we've got to do is we've got to maintain this balance. You know what your body does? Your body's intelligent. It's ready for this. It's designed for this. Except it's not really designed for what we do to it. Our bodies were not designed for us to be able to process every food the way we do in modern times. And to take in the things that we drink and eat that have no basis in nature whatsoever. So we're putting all this acid in. So the body does, it says, my God, we have an emergency here. We've got to solve this. So the body uses stores of alkalinity to neutralize the acid. And you have those stores in your body. You have alkaline reserves, they're called. And in those alkaline reserves, you have a variety of things like magnesium, calcium, et cetera, et cetera. So the body knows how to do that. But here's the problem. If you keep putting more acid in than the body can deal with, pretty soon, what do you think happens to your reserves? They go down. Pretty soon you don't have any reserves. Now you're in a dangerous situation. Now you're going to start having a major dis-ease start to affect your body. Like, remember FloJo, this incredible athlete? She just died recently. And here's this woman who was supposedly, so fit. She was fit, but she was unhealthy. She created so much acid. Because, by the way, does working out produce lactic acid in mass? And if you're a sprinter, does that build more acid than if you're aerobically running? Yes or no? You bet it does. So she kept pushing, and she got below her reserves, and then the organs in the body start breaking down. But people go, oh, there's a bad heart on this person, there's a bad this. What makes it bad, what tears the process down, other than your initial genetic weakness, is the acid. And whether your genetic weakness is affected or not, is acids go to the weakest part of the body. And so they weaken something that's already in trouble. Is this making sense to you? Okay? It's such an important understanding. So, guess where the body now goes to survive? It takes these acids out of the bloodstream and into the fats of the body. Because that takes the acid away from the vital organs of the body. Because if it gets in the vital organs, you got real problems. Now, what if your genetic tendency is not to hold much fat? People that are fat tend to actually be a little bit more healthy very often if their arteries aren't clogged, because they can deal with more of the acid than somebody who's skinny, interestingly enough. And you can see this in people's blood if you study it. So what happens, it goes into fat. Now, by the way, Picture this. This is the average person that I see. They're like, let's say a woman as an example. She really is committed to her body. The culture has created these anchors that women focus even more on it than men do. Unfairly, by the way. So this woman really wants to make this change. So she really does a really good diet. She really makes all these shifts. And she says, I gotta exercise. But she's so stressed about it, she's creating an immense amount of what? Right? Secondly, when she exercises to extreme because she's sick and tired of being overweight. Now I'm gonna get a trainer and I'm gonna kick butt. I'm gonna do whatever I can. So she produces massive exercise with massive amounts of lactic what? Probably exercises anaerobically more than likely. Can you over-exercise, yes or no? Oh, yes. And so now all this additional acids in her body. And she says, wait a second, it can't be my metabolism because I'm not eating a bunch and I'm working out like a maniac. I'll tell you what it is. You're not over fat, you're over acid. You will not let go of the fat no matter how much you exercise, no matter how much you eat right, if you do not create an environment that is more alkaline. You can't. It's a survival tool. Now, I was with the gentleman who introduced this concept to me that I want to talk to you about. His name is Dr. Young, and I'll tell you how I got to meet him and how it's changed my life personally. But what I can tell you is I was with him recently, with a group of doctors from all over the world, from Russia, from Korea, from all over the place. And I went through a week with him studying people's blood. And I just did it as an amateur. I'm not a doctor. There's nothing I can use, but I like to understand this stuff with precision. I'm a maniac for that. And while I was there, a group of his patients came in. He's a microbiologist, right? He's based in Utah. And they came in one after another, and we saw the before and after of their blood after they began to what I'm going to ask you to do, which is alkalize and energize your body. We're going to make sure you get a lot more alkalinity in your diet and in your fluids so that your body can deal with this and not have to pull from your reserves. While we're there, he started showing us what happens here in this situation. He shows us examples. You know how when people get older, very often they shrink? Do you ever wonder why that happens? Do you think it's like, oh, it's just our way back into the ground? We came out of it, went our way up? No. The reason is because when a person lives an acid lifestyle, after you go through your reserves and after you store in the fat, guess what's next? It needs calcium. And so it leaches it from your bones continuously. And so your bones get weaker and weaker and you get more and more compressed. It's like stealing bone mass almost as a metaphor. It's not exactly how it is from your body. There's no reason for you to shrink, just to give you a clue. Okay? The only reason you shrink is because your bones are weak because you're so acidic and your body is leaching from it. And you'll begin to break down in all kinds of other ways too. Your muscles get flabby because acid eats it away. And there are other elements also that affect this to give you an idea. But here's what was really fascinating. I saw so many changes in people that were so dramatic it would sound like, a religious revival. But they're in this doctor's office and all these other doctors studying it. And one woman, which was really neat because she's been studied since she was 14 years old by the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, which is the place that you get the definitive answers in the United States anyway. And so the National Institutes of Health studied her and her entire family, but her personally since she was 14, this woman. She's now 37 years old. The reason her family's been studied is because they have hypercholesterol. There's no one in her family with less than 450 in cholesterol. Yeah, if you're not familiar with it, around 200 would be reasonable. 450 is off the chart. I mean, you're a walking heart attack, basically, right? So, and by the way, that's what's happened. Her father died at 43. Her mother died at 41. Her sister died at 39. She's 37. And the NIH and the University of Utah both have studied her, but the NIH since 14, and they've tried to use their family as an example, and they tried every diet they could on them, every kind of treatment you can imagine. They put them on low cholesterol, no cholesterol diets. And their cholesterol still rises or stays the same. They've never been able to reduce it. This woman has been doing what I'm going to show you today, alkalizing and energizing, practicing everything I was teaching before, but adding the focus of alkalinity to her diet, drinking a green type of drink that brings more alkalinity into the body. She's dropped 50 pounds in the last 6 weeks. She's never been able to lose weight. Why? She had so much what in her body quick. So her body's hanging on to it. Now the body's alkaline, it's just going like crazy, and she's not working out half as hard or anything like that. But the second thing is she's lost already 190 points off her cholesterol in 6 weeks. Nowhere in her entire, deserves a hand. I agree. Let's give her a hand. All right? What's cool about this is it's, documented by the NIH because sometimes individual researchers do their thing and people go, so it's really outstanding to be able to see that. So all it is, and I asked Dr. Young, I said, so why? Help me with this. Why would her cholesterol go down though? He said, Tony, cholesterol, you don't need any more cholesterol. Your body, as most of us know, makes cholesterol. The only reason you get additional cholesterol is you're eating animal products. So you're eating the cholesterol of other creatures and putting it in your body. So with their dead mass, you're taking their cholesterol. All right? Doesn't this sound attractive? Okay? But he said, here's the real problem. He said, you get your body where your blood, you put more acid in. Your blood's got to stay at 7.36 or real close, right? So it's got to do something. Now, it tries to use your fat stores. It tries to your alkaline reserves. It tries to do anything to balance it out. Let's say that you've maxed out those things, and all this acid is going to run through your arteries. What will acid do to your arteries? It'll burn a hole in it like that. You'd be dead. You can't have arteries with holes in them, right? So the body says, we need a binding agent. We need something to grab a hold of this acid and protect the arterial wall. So it secretes or gathers, if you've had additional cholesterol, the cholesterol, and it puts it on the wall to protect the sensitive linings from all the acid. And by the way, there's no downside to that if you were to then change your diet. But if you keep being acid, the body keeps adding cholesterol till pretty soon there's no room for the blood to go through. But it's like, do I die now or do I got a chance of survival? He said, so when she became more alkaline, her body didn't need the cholesterol anymore. The body adjusts. It's intelligent. It feels what's going on. It starts to release the cholesterol out of her system. Plus, he was super hydrating her, flooding her body in a way that cleansed herself of those cholesterols. Does this make sense to you? I mean, this is breakthrough stuff. Now, let me tell you why I'm telling you this and why I found out about this, because I've lived a pretty energetic lifestyle for most of my life, prided myself that I can rock the house, whether it's 2,000 people or whether it's 20,000, for as long as the day can go by. And I did it because years ago I made a huge shift in my life, which is this dietary approach that I'm describing to you, and this lifestyle approach. And I freed myself of the fear, which took away some of the acid by itself. Right? You heard earlier I described I was always afraid early in my life I was going to die of cancer. That'll create some nice acid for you. So what happened for me is I've gone all these years. I'm now 39 years old, just turned 39. And so as I came through this process about, roughly probably 2 years ago, I started to get to the point where I was using much more of my mind for the energy as opposed to my body. Can anybody relate to that? It's more mental energy and like will. Like I get on stage and crank, but it wasn't like I feel now. It's just like that just feels effortless. It was more like, am I going to do one more song? Kind of like a lot of you were thinking over this weekend, right? So what happened was I had this mindset of, I'm an Adonis and I'm humble about it. I've got this energy, I'm going to kick butt, take names. And what happened for me is it started like by the end of a program, I was wiped. But you know how things happen gradually? So you don't quite notice. It's kind of like, the old metaphor, you put the frog in warm water and you turn up the water slowly, it'll boil to death. The old metaphor. You put it in boiling water, it jumps right out. Well, most of us, our challenges come so slowly that we adjust each stage and we don't realize what we've lost. And it's like I feel when I do the Living Health Seminar, I'm almost like trying to tell someone what a rose smells like who's never really smelled one. Because most people have never given themselves the gift of that kind of dynamic energy. They've never had it because no one taught them how to have that. And that's my real goal in being here. I want you to realize, I want you to experience that nothing tastes as good as fit, healthy, and vital feels. Nothing. And once you feel that, you'll get addicted to that feeling, and it will change every aspect of your life, your relationships, your finances, everything. Because here we are living in this culture where people value everything more than their body. Their money, their career, we'll do anything for our kids, right? All these other things. And what's the last thing that shows up? Our bodies. And thank God that, our bodies are as strong as they are, but we deserve to have them at full tilt. So for me, as I started to feel this little bit of loss, so I thought, okay, I know what the problem is. I'm getting toxic. I'm exerting more energy, right, on an ongoing basis than I'm building back up. I'm not sleeping, and I'm not resting, and I'm go the whole time, and I just need to balance out and cleanse my system. So I decided to do that. Now, I know quite a bit about a variety of sciences that have to do with how to study the blood, and there's quite a bit of research that's been done overseas. And there's a certain type of microscope in the past called a dark field microscope. Dark field microscopy, I guess is how they pronounce it. And so years ago I had that, and it allows you to see what you don't see in a traditional blood test. It allows you to see that your blood, unlike traditional science tells you, is not sterile. It's like another universe with all these creatures moving around inside of it. And again, those of you coming to Mastery, you're going to see all of you. I'm going to do your blood for every single one of you as part of Mastery. So you're going to get to see your personal bloodstream. But what's interesting is there's a new microscope out now called an ultralight microscope that allows you to see even deeper. And what you also can see is things like candida or yeast in your blood, parasites. You can see everything, and it's very visual. So before I went on this cleanse, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go look at my blood so I can see how bad it is, and also so I can feel the victory afterwards and see it clean up. Being somewhat visual, this was important to me. So I went down. I was in La Jolla. I found out about this place that did this new form of microscope work. I went down, looked at my blood, and honestly, it scared the hell out of me because my white blood cells were ripped open and like leaking out. They weren't moving at the pace they're supposed to move. You know, and my immune system's broken down, which probably was how I was feeling inside. I was feeling run down. And I'm thinking, God, you know, I know I eat well and all that stuff, but I thought, no, I'm not. I'm going full tilt. I'm not breathing. I'm not doing the other things that are so important. And I'm exercising like a maniac on top of it, right? Because I want to be fit. And so I looked at this, and then what was interesting about it is I was also full of candida. And candida is so full. I mean, you can't turn on the commercials these days without finding more about a woman's yeast problem than you want to know. Okay? There's all these products. But men have just as much yeast as women do. They just don't, we won't go through the details. They just don't notice it as easily. We'll move right on from that one, okay? The point of the matter is, what yeast do in your bloodstream is they eat all your glucose, which is all your energy storage, right? All your sugar. So what that does is you eat and you're never satisfied because you're not getting the nutrients. Remember, taking in nutrition doesn't mean anything. If you don't have proper digestion and assimilation, you have no nutrition. So what happens is along the way, the yeast consume it. So I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but I would find myself, I was so busy, I wouldn't eat all day long. Then about 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, I was ready to eat a human. I was like, I mean, I got to have something, man. I get that state where you got to have something. How many can relate? Come on, say aye. That's because your blood sugar is where? Through the floor, right? So I'd find that, and it created a lot of stress, and it created my energy being super high, and then boom, I'd hit a crash point, man, and I would crash if I didn't go do something. So all of a sudden, I look at this thing, and I can see why. It's eating it all up. And by the way, you know what yeast does once it eats all your sugar? If you don't give it enough sugar, which it demands, your cravings for sugar are the little creatures inside of you demanding it. I got a friend, some of you know, I mentioned Pete Egoscue. Pete's one of the most driven people I know. 4 a.m. up doing his workout. He was a Marine. He just never stops, right? Just full tilt. But here's this totally fit, healthy, structural guy going for it, but every day he drank beer. Because after all, he's a Marine. Right? Part of his what, guys? Do you remember? Identity, right? So I talked to Pete about it a few times. I said, I don't care. You can do whatever you want to do. But I said, it just seems incongruent. No, it's not. But he craved it. When he had his blood done, he was full of yeast. The yeast were screaming for the alcohol, wanting it desperately. When he cleansed the system, he didn't want to stop drinking alcohol. He just had no desire for it whatsoever. Zero. If you got a lot of acid addictions right now, as acid addictions are like cigarettes or alcohol or coffee, where you got to have it, and you get yourself alkaline, this is not a willpower thing. You won't go through the headaches and all that crap people do. That headaches is all the acid that's released back into your body now as you start to cleanse. It's in the cells, in the fat. And when you stop giving acid, the body goes, all right, we got a chance to get rid of this stuff. Put it in the blood and let's get it out. When it puts it back in the blood, you get this headache and you're detoxifying, it's called. I'm going to show you how you can detoxify without all the pain, which is really wonderful, by having enough alkalinity to deal with those things. Does that sound good? It's really important. Really important. So anyway, the point of the matter is, I look at my blood, and I got candida in there, so no wonder my energy's not as high. Sure, I'm living well, supposedly. Now, what caused the candida? That's the part I want to understand. Because look at me, I eat really well. I really do. I thought, well, you know, candida is feeding on sugar. I don't eat sugar. But, you know, I'm vegetarian. And I see a lot of vegetarians. And meat eaters always look at them and go, I don't want to look like that. Well, that's because they're eating tofu and drinking milk and eating cheese and eating all that crap that's horrible for them, but also they eat all kinds of carbohydrates that convert into sugar, and sugar ultimately, taken in mass, becomes acid in the system. It has an acid ash. So does protein has an acid ash. You go, what's left to eat? You know, don't tell me you're going to talk to me about veggies, are you? We're not getting there, are we? Yep. But I also want to show you how you can have like a big salad, drink a green drink and get most of your alkalinity from that so you can still have the food you have, maybe in hopefully a little bit smaller quantity because you won't desire it as much as you become more alkaline and more balanced. The point of the matter is I started looking at this and going, boy, I know what it is it's the pastas, it's the carbs, and I always had fruit from breakfast till noon. I've taught people that for years. I'm dead wrong about that. And the reason I'm dead wrong about that, and I didn't know, and it served me well because fruit cleansed me, it was great, gave me energy. What I didn't realize was we live in a society where most of our food is processed. And as we're eating all this processed food, we're getting so much acid that eating a bunch of fruit on top of it adds that much more sugar and creates more candida. How many follow that? Okay? So I'm not saying fruit's not good. I'm saying you don't want to consume excess amounts of it, especially if you've got a diet that has lots of other carbs in it, because you're creating an environment. Now follow me. We'll come full circle now. You're creating an environment that these little creatures will proliferate, right? Because they got a feeding ground, right? The rats don't come till there's enough trash to feed them. When there's all this trash, they're going to come. And once they get there, they tell their friends, right? They camp out. And they grow and expand and create more of a problem, don't they? So you don't want to create trash inside. Trash inside starts with the acid, and then it starts to create more and more challenges. And as we do this, as we become more acidic, as we get more sugar in our bloodstream, we create the things that suck our energy away. As I started to say, when they're done with your sugars, these yeast start to eat your proteins. They start to literally break down your soft tissues and your muscle mass. So if you're real flabby and all that stuff, I don't know the real statistic. There are books that claim, there's some scientists that now claim that as much as 70% of the population is infected with yeast and candida. I mean, it sounds to me extreme, except when you look at the lifestyle of most people, then you go, maybe it's not extreme. But you can find out very easily by doing a blood test, and you got to cleanse it out. The good news is you can cleanse it out easily. All you got to do is alkalize the bloodstream, because this environment that the yeast grows in has to be acidic. Right? You change it, it's like you can try and kill the yeast. That's what a lot of people do. Think about this. If you've got, let's say, a stale pond and there are mosquitoes everywhere, and you take out some DDT and you kill all those mosquitoes, does that solve the problem? No, what's going to happen? More mosquitoes are going to come because you haven't dealt with the source of the problem. Right? It's the stale water that's the problem. It's the environment, guys. It's always the environment. And the good news is we're in total control of that. So the principles I'm going to take you through in a few minutes are really how to create that environment in a way that doesn't make your lifestyle a pain in the butt, that's really easy. In fact, it's 6 gifts you can give yourself that are going to alkalize you and energize you. And then it's 4 things you want to avoid. You want to reduce, if you can do it, eliminate them from your life, because they're just pure poison. They make you acidic, they destroy the system, they break your cells down, and then it gets accelerated. And by the way, even your teeth. Think about this. If you talk to your dentist has been educated, they'll tell you sugar doesn't burn holes in teeth. It's the sugar as it metabolizes into acid, which all sugars do, it drills a hole in your teeth. It's the acid that does that. Now imagine that acid going through your organs, through your tissues. Imagine that you have a genetic strengths and weaknesses. If yours is in the prostate, gentlemen, the acid will go there. And that's where you're going to experience the biggest problem. If it's in your breast that's that situation for a woman, it's going to go there. It's going to go wherever your weak point is. If your liver's weak, it's going to go there. The weakest part of your body is where the acids will settle, because that part of the body can't clean up the mess as quickly. Does that make sense? And so then you pay the price in your weak place. So you must be alkaline. This whole conversation is, number 1, how do we alkalize the body? Why do we alkalize the body? Because we've got to have the 7.36. And again, you can do this. You can go by today, go pick up all those things, put it in your mouth, and see where you are. I'm going to give you something to do today that will instantaneously begin to create that change, and where you can measure it on that same tape to see you get your alkalinity back, so you're not wiping yourself out. For myself, before I do a seminar like this, is this an acidic experience, do you think? Not because of pain, but because the amount of anaerobic state, at least for me, and probably for you too, right? A little more for me than you, but you're joining me when we're going like this full tilt. We're going all day, bam, 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 cranking, right? Eyes moving, jumping, going. All that produces acid. The body's designed to do that and get rid of it. The problem is when you stack that on the acid you already have from the rest of your lifestyle and your diet, now it might get overwhelming. And for me, I don't just come for one weekend like you are. This is my life. So when I'm gearing up for a program like this, or I'm doing a program like Date with Destiny or Mastery, Life Mastery for 9 days, at the end of that, I'd be wiped. Now what I do is I load up on alkalinity in advance. I drink alkalinity, I take it in, I eat in an alkaline way on a regular basis, but I have some specific colloidal products. Colloidals are the smallest particles things break down into. And they're delivered not through the digestive tract where it can get burned out, but directly under the tongue in a sublingual way. So it gets 98% of it gets absorbed directly in my bloodstream. So I take these, and I have zinc, for example, and manganese, right? All those different elements so that when I come here and crank, my recovery is fantastic. I don't break down. I have a chiropractor, Herbie, who some of you may have met outside, who travels with me at these events. He's traveled with me for about 4 years. And I always know that when he's going to test my adrenals are always gone. That's not hard to figure out because I use every ounce of them because I got to move not just myself, but move all of you day and night, right? So my adrenal glands were completely overused because I was always going through my reserves. And all parts of my body, there are different muscle tests for how different organs are working. And I know there are 4 or 5 things that are always broken down. He'd work on me, I get back, slam me back on stage, go crank again, right? And so Herbie comes after I've made this change in my diet. I went and got this blood test to finish the story. I said, what do I do? They said, here's the things you should do. You might want to meet Dr. Young. I'm sure he'd love to meet you. I said, I'd love to meet him. But here's what you can do. And they said, in 30 days, you can have this totally turned around. I said, show me some examples. So they showed me before and after people's blood. Being visual, that convinced me. So I said, great. Showed me a woman who had breast cancer and what her blood looked like. And it scared me because mine was moving in that direction, that kind of breakdown. And they showed me 30 days later and blood was perfect, right? And she's fine. So I went and did this for 30 days, and I went and had the blood test again because I'm not a believer in, I've never promoted supplements because most of it is expensive urine. Right? 90% of it just goes straight through you. Your body can't digest it. It's not absorbed. So I've had a lot of chances to make a lot of money, quite honestly, where people said, you could do this, put your name on it, make it go, and I've never done it. There's one person I promoted a detox product that I believe in. That's it, in 20 years of doing this. And I know the soil's depleted, but who cares if you're getting something else your body can't absorb? But these particular products, I'm different than my wife, Becky. Becky, if you came to my house and you opened one cupboard or 3 cupboards, you'd find every supplement known to humanity. And I don't take any of them. My wife likes to do, 5 or 6 programs simultaneously, just to cover all bases. I said to her, honey, how are you going to know what's really working if you do all this stuff? She goes, well, I don't know. It just feels good. Well, now you can take a drug and feel good, right? Feeling good does not mean it's doing good. Feeling good sometimes is because you're stimulated because you put a poison in your body and your body's speeding up. But the blood doesn't lie. So I went 30 days later and I looked at my blood and my blood was perfect. No candida in the system, white blood cells perfect. I knew that before I got there because I felt better than I can remember feeling in probably 5 or 6 years. And I think I feel pretty awesome. But I remembered how good I felt before that I'd gradually forgotten. Becky, by the way, has a little different diet than I do, not much, but she eats more animal products. And she was full of parasites. And on the screen, we saw this parasite literally pop through one of her blood cells, right? And you could see it swim through the blood, and it was like, ugh, right? By the way, her diet's probably better than 90% of you. If you eat meat, I know it's better than you. And so it scared the hell out of her, right? And I went, see, I told you about those eggs, right? Because she was eating eggs, right? And I was trying to explain to her, what is in eggs? You take in an egg, you got millions of microforms that you're consuming with one egg in your body. One. All these little creatures. It's unbelievable. And when you see it, you'll never go back. It's easy when you don't have to look at it, right? You go, oh, look at that little thing, little sunny side up, looks like the sunshine, for God's sakes. How could that hurt somebody? But when you see what you're eating with it, then you start going, ooh, you start feeling these creatures going through you. Yes. Anyway, 30 days later, she was convinced, right? 30 days later, no parasites in her blood. So Dr. Young and I become good friends. I just recently did a power talk with him that's going to be edited, and if I had it here, I'd give it to you. It's not done, unfortunately. And his work is amazing. And he's affected my principles because everything I taught before is totally in alignment with creating alkalinity except eating fruit in the morning till noon. And I've been teaching that for years, so I was an idiot. I apologize. But it really worked for me. I mean, it worked at the time. But it has a cumulative effect if you're doing all these other things too. So I'm not suggesting you can't eat fruit. And I'm going to now become very specific about the principles. But I wanted to give you this overview. Does this make sense to you? Okay? Now I want to tell you one other thing. There's 2 words I want you to write in your book. Alkalize and energize. Alkalize and energize. Alkalinity, you now understand how important it is. How important is it? It's life and death. That's how important it is. You got too much acid, are you likely going to have difficulty losing weight unless you have a genetic tendency not to keep weight at all? Yes or no? I guarantee you're not going to be able to lose weight if you keep your body in an acid place. Or if you lose weight, it'll be temporary and you'll gain it back. Because the body, like, for example, if you go on a diet like the Atkins diet, where you eat every cooked dead food you can imagine, right? And you eat no fresh vegetables or anything like that, you're not supposed to do that. It'd be horrible for you, right? Those people have to pee on a stick each day to make sure, it's the truth, it's in the diet, so you can see your urine to see how your pH has changed. So you don't break down too fast, because when you're on the Atkins diet, you're on pure acid, and your muscles are breaking down, your body's breaking down. It's amazing how you lose weight, because the body takes all of its water and urinates it out as fast as it can to try and get rid of the acid, so you lose water weight. But see, anybody who's been on the Atkins diet for 6 months, you won't find them. Not healthfully anyway, right? Because it's pure acid. So you got to understand, this alkalinity is the whole thing. So you got to alkalize and you got to energize. Now, what does energize mean? It means, remember, every organ in your body works on this microelectricity, this electrical magnetic frequency. And all of that is happening in your system. When you're eating foods only provide value when they can be converted into the elements necessary for this chemistry that allows electrical charges to continue. Food actually gets to the organs through these little electrical charges. It's how things are moved around within the system. Are all foods equal? Like, are all carbohydrates equal in the amount of electrical, alive energy in them? Yes or no? Your common sense knows the answer to that is no. Absolutely not. So open your book and I'll show you specifically what that means in terms of energy, and then we'll come back and I'll show you about balance and imbalance. Flip over to page 22, if you would, for a moment. It says, we must avoid foods that take away more energy than they provide. Your body operates on a subtle electromagnetic current. Nerve signals are, in fact, electrical charges. Your brain, your heart, all the organs in your body really emit these fields of electrical current. And your cells communicate with each other through pulses of electricity. When we eat food, our food breaks down into the food particles to their smallest size, called colloidals. A colloidal is a smallest possible form of a nutrient particle size. The usual size is, I don't know how to pronounce it, certain microns in diameter. These nutrient particles are then carried to cells via electrical charges. If we eat something, guys, that's lifeless, that really doesn't have the electrical charges in it any longer, then you're not going to get the energy that your body deserves. So you won't get, as I said here, the food itself is taking more energy than it's giving if it doesn't give you enough electrical charges. So for example, look to the right here. And these are in megahertz, the amount of electrical charges in different foods. So take a good look here. What kind of electrical charge is available in chocolate cake in megahertz? 1 to 3. Now, by the way, a tumor has 30 electrical charges, to give you an idea, by comparison. A Big Mac has 5 megahertz of energy. Now, before you look at that, maybe I should give you a frame of reference. Look up here for a second. Each of the organs of your body has a certain amount of energy, electrical energy, that can be measured in megahertz for it to be functioning healthfully. The average of your core organs, like your brain, your heart, your lungs, is 70 megahertz. So just think about this. If you need 70 megahertz of energy, and your primary diet is made up of Big Macs, 5 megahertz, chocolate cake, 1 to 3 megahertz, right? Are you going to be in an energy deficit or an energy abundance? Deficit. And so your energy is going to be low. Now, let me ask you this. If your energy is low, will the organs of your body be working at their total functional peak efficiency, yes or no? So if they're not working efficiency, and let's say part of that is cleansing or providing what your body needs, then those systems start to shut down and you build up more toxic waste. That's just natural. Your body normally will get rid of, but you're no longer having enough energy to function properly. So you go through this slow decline most people call aging. Does this make sense? So take a look here, if you would, and you'll see some of the other foods we've got here. Vitamins. I mean, most vitamins and mineral supplements are 10 to 30 megahertz, and that's if your body can absorb them. Raw almonds are 40 to 50 megahertz. If you saw me snacking during the break here, I grabbed something, that's raw almonds I have up here. I have cucumbers too, which are super high. Your liver is 55 to 60 megahertz. Your colon, 58 to 63. Your stomach, 58 to 65. Top of your head, 60 to 70. Your feet. So you can see your body's basically in that 60 to 70 range. Fruits do provide, you see this? They provide a lot of energy. They're alive, and so you can have them, but you're going to want to eat them properly, which we'll talk about. Green vegetables are the highest, 70 to 90 megahertz. Plus, green vegetables, ladies and gentlemen, are extremely what? Anybody know? What's the thing we want? Alkaline. We want alkalinity, and green vegetables are some of the most alkaline things you can take into your body. Next is you'll see live, fresh wheatgrass, 70 to 90. Your brain is 72 to 78. A computer runs on 90 to 400 megahertz, to give you an idea. How many of you love a rose? Like you get in the presence of a rose or you smell a rose, it just feels really great. How many have that feeling? Say aye. A rose has 320 megahertz coming out of it. It's like you get this charge. All flowers don't do that to you, do they? Some have more than others. And what the feelings you're having are actual electrical charges that you can experience if you measure them. It's fascinating. And then I'm going to show you a green drink that I actually brought for you outside that's between 250 and 350 megahertz. When you drink it, you'll feel like an immediate sense of charge of energy because all the charges your cells need are available immediately, plus it's alkaline. So it's available there. So I put over here how the 70 came about as the magic number for ideally for megahertz. Turn back 2 pages, though, and then I'll show you how we get out of balance and how to get in balance quickly. Now, how many would agree that the real challenge that most people have is not some bug is attacking them, but the real challenge that they have is their environment has basically been compromised. That they've done things probably in their lifestyle, consciously or unconsciously, that have put the body in a weakened state, has caused the environment to be polluted, and now problems are building on top of each other. How many buy that theory? Say aye. Okay, if you buy that theory, then the question is, how do we get there? How do we get imbalanced? And then the second question, the more important one, then is, how do we get that balance back quickly? So if you open to page 19 in your book, you'll see what we call the cycle of imbalance. The cycle of imbalance. Now you'll see number 1 at the top here. The first thing that happens that takes us out of balance is there's a disturbance. Now what could disturb our bloodstreams, disturb our environment? Well, as I start out with again, negative thoughts, negative words, negative actions, those emotions, do they have an impact on our bloodstream, yes or no? Absolutely. And you can feel it, can't you? You know it's visceral. You know your whole body starts to shift when you go in these states. Now, after you have that experience, try adding to that a polluted environment. Do you think breathing, I should say, all the smog in the air makes you alkaline or acid? What would your common sense say? Totally makes you acidic. Okay? Now, LA's air is a lot better than it was before. Most of the country is getting better, fortunately, but it still affects us. Acid diets. What's an acid diet? A diet that's made up of animal proteins is acid. A diet made up of a lot of cooked oils is acid. A diet that's made up of a lot of sugar is acid. A diet made up of a lot of carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, processed carbohydrates, like pastas, etc. It's going to have a lot of sugar. Sugar, just think sugar equals acid and acid equals glue. That's a good way for you to think about it. Sugar equals acid and acid equals glue because what happens is, someone said during the break, they said, no, Tony, the acid's positive and the red blood cell, is negative, the red blood cell is negative. No, the red blood cell, the outside of the red blood cell is a negative charge. That's what keeps them repelling. The inside is positive. But what happens is when you put yourself in a position where you have this acid, it strips that charge, and now these cells start to collect. They start to move and become unhealthy. When they start banging into each other, and you can see it in people's bloodstreams, you can see the difference in what happens there between a healthy bloodstream where the red blood cells are big and plump and alive and round versus you see these misshapen cells and you see these cells starting to break down, and very often you see things like parasites starting to break out of the cell. Literally, you see it rip out of the cell. It's a very scary thing to see. Radiation can do this. In fact, one of the radiations that most people, we don't have enough science on yet. There have been a few research projects, but they're not being accepted by traditional science yet, except now they're showing up in lawsuits. As I'm sure you've heard about places where people are near big electrical towers and all the rates of cancer that are happening there. It's because our whole body is electromagnetic. You start moving around and putting a dose of radiation or electricity, either one, into your body's not ready for, it's going to have an impact. I'm walking around with this little thing here, which seems to have almost no charge at all, you would think. But if you go have your muscles tested when you got this thing turned on, my muscles turn off, so now I'm using more energy. So one of the things I have is this little chip that you guys have seen. My wife got one. I said, come on, honey, not another one of these things, Now I'm wearing one, But the reason is because you can physically feel it. And they've done research studies to show, because what it does is it collects the emitted low-frequency energy and keeps it from going directly into your body. We're in front of these screens all the time, most of us, right? Using computers now. We have all this stuff that we don't know the impact on. So you don't have to live crazily, but we want to avoid any excess radiation because could that disturb the delicate balance, could it, of the electrical magnetic part of your body? Yes or no? Clearly. So those disturbances start there. And then any kind of other destructive behavior or emotion. Now, once you have a disturbance, think of this. Irritation leads to mutation. Right? That's where it can go. So when something gets irritated, it gets out of balance. It either weakens, dies, or mutates. So irritation leads to mutation. So what happens is when you have a disturbance, the second thing happens is cells become disorganized. They change basically to try and deal with an environment that's different because life wants to live. I mean, when you even think about cancer cells are cells that are striving to live so much that they can even expand like crazy in an environment where there's no oxygen. You know, I talk about, at the end of Jurassic Park, the animals somehow find a way to create themselves. Life doesn't want to give up. Even cancer cells, that's a part of you wanting to live. You create an environment where they had to mutate to live. So they mutated, and now they're growing more rapidly than you want them to. That's what happens with cancer. It's actually life moving forward, and it's adapting to the environment we give it to. So when you disturb yourself, some disturbances are huge. A car accident, is that a significant disturbance to your body? You bet. That ruptures cells. When you rupture cells, do you think there's more acid in the body or less? Quick. More acid. The body's got to deal with that. So much of it can really be a trauma to the system. But when you get disturbances, cells disorganize so they can adapt to this environment. As they do that, the third step is you get a compromised environment. What that means is cells start to really adapt now to this morbid environment. This is an environment that is not healthy. And all of a sudden now you have healthy cells becoming what? Unhealthy cells. I mean, you can see this under the microscope with people in their bloodstreams. And all of a sudden you have these things called germs that start to grow like crazy, like bacteria and yeast and fungus and molds. Because now you've created an environment in which they can feed. You've created a place where they get to live. Now what's really fascinating, and you'll see this at Mastery, and this will sound insane to some of my doctor friends in the room, but I took Dr. Solomon, who's on the UN board of aging, and he's the head of the Council for Health and Illness, I guess it is, for the United Nations. He's also from Johns Hopkins University, who's the head of nutrition there. Traditionally trained guy. And I brought him to Dr. Young about 2 months ago. He was supposed to go for 2 hours because I said, I've seen things in the bloodstream that traditional biology would never say is possible. I've seen a red blood cell literally not be attacked from the outside, but literally when the environment became acid, start to morph and become a rod form, a bacteria. We think of bacteria coming from the outside. Here's this red blood cell like a butterfly morphing and becoming another kind of cell. And then morphing back later when it went to an alkaline part of the body back into a red blood cell. It's all called in videotape. It's called pleomorphism. It's supposed to be impossible. And I said, spell it. I think it's P-L-E-O morphism, M-O-R-P-H-I-S-M. The bottom line is, and he's captured this several times because this guy's whole focus is the blood. He does everybody's blood and he studies it and watches it. So I called Dr. Solomon. I said, all I can tell you, I've never felt better in my life. I see my blood is so pure. I've seen my blood go. Now the red blood cells are big and plump because my body's alkaline. I got enough water in the system, not dehydrated. My energy's amazing. I said, I've always had high energy, but not where it was like I had such reserves. That's the best word I can give to you. I have reserve now. Before I could do it, and I was going through my reserves, And I said, come take a look. Fly out for me. He said, okay, I'll go check it out. He said, I'm going between these 2 places. I'll stop for 2 hours. He stopped for 2 days. And he called me up and he said, this is unbelievable. He said, I want to test that. He's going to do a study at Harvard Medical School. He's trying to arrange one, and at Johns Hopkins to be able to show the impact that this has on the bloodstream, to show that this has occurred. He wants to be able to duplicate what he's seen. But he said, this is unbelievable because we always think of the outside world attacking us. He said, what I'm seeing is that the inside environment, just like with HIV, they say it, and now they say for these viruses that the reason they can't stop it is because it keeps what? Mutating into something else. Well, our red blood cells de-differentiate and become something else. I mean, I know it sounds bizarre. You don't have to buy into that to be able to do what I'm telling you. But I can tell you, when you go to Mastery, Dr. Young's going to speak there, and you'll see it. He's going to bring his videotapes for you to see. It's seeing, it's believing. It's unbelievable. Anyway, the point of the matter is, when our bloodstream, the reason I'm telling you that, becomes compromised, even the red blood cells themselves, if you buy into this, and again, seeing it, you'd see it's true, and Dr. Young would just tell you as a scientist. But what happens is this starts to create this buildup of these bacteria, yeast, molds, and guess what they do? They're creatures, right? They're you basically mutated plus whatever you've consumed, they're feeding now on your energy stores, and like all living things, they feed on things, and what do all living things also do? They excrete their wastes, and their wastes are pure acid. So not only are you building the acid up from your lifestyle, but you're now creating an environment where these things proliferate and or adapt. Now on top of that, they put their own waste in, which brings you to the fourth level of imbalance. Now you have debilitating acids growing, so that the waste products from those unhealthy cells pollute the environment, and they start to impact the quality of even the healthy cells now. And so more disturbances, more disorganization of cells, worse environment, more acids, and now you're going through what most people think of as debilitating diseases or aging or whatever the case may be. It's an acid problem that comes from disturbance. So how do we, by the way, does this make sense to you now? Does this make common sense to you, yes or no? I don't want you guys to trust me on any of this. I want you to test your own bodies. My whole thing is don't believe anybody. Don't be anybody's servant and don't be anybody's follower, least of all me. My whole thing is let me be a good coach to you, and you go verify with your own bloodstream. The blood doesn't lie. Let me just tell you this. It takes 20 parts of alkalinity to balance out or neutralize 1 part of acid. That's why most people are so acid. So what's neat about the blood and what's neat about the foods is you can see it. You know, it's not this little, oh, I'm going to take this supplement and hope it's okay. I mean, you can see it and you can feel it. You have both experiences. So how do we get back in balance? How many think you're out of balance? Let me see your hands. I can tell you what, if you weren't out of balance before you met me, you're out of balance now. Right? Probably because most of you don't live this way normally. Is that fair to say? In terms of the amount of energy you're exerting. So does that mean now you can't do this and you got to mitigate your life? No, you just have to provide the alkalinity that allows you to play at this level. And then you won't be playing at this level using just your mind. You'll be doing it coming from strength, and you won't break down at the end of it. I used to do seminars like Mastery, and people after 9 days are euphoric, going, making it happen. Most people didn't sleep because they had so much fun. They're going and everything else, and they get home and they get sick for about 3 days, right? Because they were innervated. Do you follow me? Their energy was lowered. And so now that I serve the green drink at all the events now, the big events that we do, and people get water bottles and you fill it up with green drink, and we drink it all day long, and people's energy stays solid all the way through time, and at the end they don't break down. So it's been really great, because before I was like, man, I got a bunch of weak people coming to my programs. What am I going to do here? You know, come on, people. How can you do that? So here's how you get in balance. What's the solution on page 21? It says the cycle of balance, which Dr. Young, at least this is, I actually helped him to write this because it was so scientific you wouldn't have understood it. But he calls it dust particle programming, which now really puts you in a deep trance, doesn't it? But here's what he says. In every cell, Béchamp, who many of you may have heard of and remembering in your studies, he and Pasteur were contemporaries, a very, very famous biochemist. He said that he found in the cells something he called a protid, which was smaller than a cell. And he said it was the basic unit of life. And that when the environment shifts, the protid is actually what creates the change in the cell. So he calls those, for simplistic terms, I got him to call it dust particles, that we come from the dust. He liked the metaphor, it works. So, but here's what it really is. Here's how you get in balance. Number one, you must cleanse. How many of you think you've built up some toxicity and some acid through your lifestyle up until now? How many think you're certain about that? Say aye. Trust me, you don't need a blood test to know that, okay? So you got to cleanse. Now, most people, when they think of cleansing, they think of buying a product that is going to make them like eliminate real rapidly. The problem with that is most of those products are very acid. Like some people take Epsom salt, which is really, I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but it'll definitely move you. Okay, okay, and I'm not talking an emotional experience either. Okay, and what it does is because it wreaks havoc. Your body goes, my God, this is pure acid, this is a poison, and it tries to eliminate as fast as it can. So your body takes with it in its path a lot of other stuff. But that's a pretty harsh way to clean your system. And there's all kinds of products that do that kind of stuff. You don't want to do that. You don't want to put a poison in your system your body has to flush out. What you want to do is superhydrate your system. Superhydrate means you're going to drink a lot more fluids than you normally do, but you're also going to drink fluids that are alkaline in nature. So you want to drink green drinks. Whether you drink Dr. Young's drink or not, you can certainly do any other form of green drinks you want. If you go by any of these juicing places, you can get fresh green drinks, and there's all kinds of them that are alkaline. Anything you want. You can imagine that it's there. But one of the most potent that most of you have heard about is wheatgrass. And the only thing with wheatgrass is it's very concentrated. So you got to make sure you gear up for drinking wheatgrass. And wheatgrass has some benefits in that the chlorophyll in the plant captures the energy of the sun, which is basically life. And the animals eat it. And then we eat the animals, those people who eat animals. And we're consuming that. Even if you see a lion take down a zebra, what does it first split open? Does anybody know? The intestines. Because, see, carnivores eat herbivores. And it's only in a survival a carnivore will attack another carnivore and try and eat it. Well, for the most part in nature, they eat herbivores. We have to get that energy ultimately through the system. And so what happens for us is the chlorophyll in the plant is what converts it to energy. And if you look at the molecular structure of wheatgrass, and you look at your own bloodstream, you look at the molecular structure of your blood, it's almost identical. It's the shape, the view of it, so forth. You'll see this at Mastery when Dr. Young gets up and walks it through it. So it's almost like eating the greens or eating the chlorophyll is like taking the blood of the plants that's still alive when it's like that. Just like it's giving yourself the ability to build your blood, and it's seen as a blood builder. There's quite a bit of scientific research on it. So you're welcome to drink that, or if you want, get some of this green drink. What's great about it is you can put it in any water you want, wherever you are. You can take it with you on the road, and you can take something. You start to get that place where you haven't eaten, and you're like, your blood sugar's going, you drink that, boom, you're solid. You'll have the fluids that you need. You won't be dehydrated. Your blood sugar will be even, and your energy will start sparking because all that electricity, all that energy is available for your body immediately. But what you're going to want to do to cleanse ideally is 7 to 10 days would be the ideal. I know many of you will not do this, but this is what I encourage you to do. 7 to 10 days where you would literally go on pretty much a liquid diet. You'd be doing green drinks, green soups. There are a variety of choices in there that you can go through during that time. The minimum you'd want to do is probably 3 to 4 days. We say, I'm just going to cleanse my system. I'm going to give all my organs a break. I'm not going to add more crap on there. I'm going to give them a rest and let my body just flush the system out. This would be the ideal. Now, I'm not going to ask you to do that if you don't want to do that. I'll tell you what to do that's more gentle and more simple. But this type of cleansing is not painful. In fact, you'll start to learn after a few days, if you do the 7 to 10 day one, you'll notice after about day 3, you don't have any hunger at all. In fact, you'll realize if you start to go eat, it's almost like, God, I'm not hungry. And you'll notice you're really doing it because you're frustrated. Or you're really doing it because you feel lonely. Or you're really doing it because there's some other emotion you're trying to feel. And since you're not eating, you won't eat, and you'll notice it. And it'll help you to break the emotional patterns that are controlling you as well. If you wanted to absolutely give your body the ultimate gift, it would be to go on a cleanse. Absolutely. And I'm now developing a program with the Four Seasons in San Diego for people to come through a 7-day cleanse down there and be able to have it be supervised and everything else. I'm getting Dr. Young involved and so forth. So later this year, we'll be doing those kinds of programs if you want to go someplace. But you don't need to go anyplace. You don't need to be in an environment. You can do it on your own. So you want to drink at least 3 liters of this type of green drink a day. 3 liters. Like for me, did they put one? Well, you can see this is what I drink the whole time I'm here if you haven't noticed. This is it. All weekend long I'm drinking this. And sometimes I alternate with water with some lemon in it because lemon adds alkalinity to the water, right? Because most water is in not good shape. I also have some drops called Prime pH that Dr. Young gave me that's much more powerful. And I put that in the green drink. So I get pure alkalinity out of it. And it's really easy, okay? But I thought I had do I have a water bottle up here? Did somebody bring one up here for me? Is it in my little stash here? Nope. Okay. Oh, thank you. That's it. I'll take that one. I like this one because it's pretty. Take yours back. This is mine. Also, I like this because the green drink looks like swamp juice, but in here it looks beautiful. By the way, the green drink doesn't taste bad. It doesn't taste good either. It's kind of neutral, you know. But this size is 1.5 liters. So you're going to want at least 2 of these a day. I drink one of these in the morning, first thing, total energy. That's what I did this morning. I put the green drink in, shake it up, ready to rock and roll, right? Some pH and green drink, the 2 of them together. And then I have them later. I'll tell you what else I do. I drink one of these, or at least half before I eat something. What do you think that does? Hunger's gone. You don't overeat. You also feel more alkaline, so some of the things you'd normally be addicted to, you'll find that addiction starts disappearing really fast. Yes?
A lot of recipes I've been using have been mixing apples, carrots, green stuff.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hold the questions because I'm going to answer you through some things, but I'll just tell you, an apple a day does not keep the doctor away. Apples actually have a very acidic effect on the body. And carrot juice, which I used to tell people to drink because it was so alkaline, is so filled with sugar That's why people don't think of drinking it. It's so full of sugar that for most people, that's creating more acid in their body, and it's also feeding candida. That's why you see some of these vegetarians, they drink carrot juice, and they go eat Rice Dream instead of ice cream, which is just pure sugar. So they're eating sugar like crazy, and they're full of candida, and they smell like it, and they look like it. Right? Go to a health food store and see your typical vegetarian person who just made it from Venice Beach and see if that's who you want to be. Okay. Yes. So, we want to cleanse. How many understand what we want to do here? Say I. What's the key word to cleansing? We don't want to hurt our bodies. We want to super what? And by the way, in a cleanse, you would ideally not bring any other food in, right? This super hydration is not just 7 to 10 days. This is every day for me. Does that make sense? If I'm really super hydrating, then for me, I'm drinking 3 of these, okay, to give you an idea. Maybe even 4 sometimes, which I thought would be impossible. But I'll tell you what, if you do that for just 3 or 4 days, if you guys did nothing out of this day, you said, that Robbins, he's a nice guy, he's a little crazy, but I'll do this for 3 or 4 days. By the 4th day, you won't believe how good you feel. I mean, aches and pains and stuff you have will be gone because you have so much alkalinity in your system, your body will have a buffer to deal with that stuff. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Okay, so we cleanse. Second thing we do to get back in balance is we interrupt the what? That's right, so it says take control. We gotta break the destructive pattern that's creating the problem. So that pattern might be the way you're using your emotions. You go, you know what? I learned all this stuff this weekend. I'm not going to indulge in this anger stuff. I'm doing anger. And I'm doing depression. Let me breathe. Let me change. And you make a shift. Maybe the pattern is you keep eating like hell. Well, you got to break the pattern. Because if we cleanse and then you go back and start doing the same stuff, eventually you'll be back in an acid state again. Does that make sense? Now, by doing all this alkalinity on a regular basis, you start to balance it. But remember, 20 parts of alkalinity to neutralize 1 part of acid. You don't want to build up any more acid than you need to. Then the third step is we need to provide the body what it really needs. Once we take control of those patterns, provide it what it needs. And Dr. Young has a metaphor. He says, every man needs a good woman. In fact, every woman needs a good woman. He's like a good mom. Okay? All right? And what woman stands for is you got to give the body what it needs, which number 1 is what? Water. Number 2 is oxygen. Does that sound familiar? You got to give the body the oxygen. I'm going to show you how we're going to do this. Number 3 is minerals. And again, it's not only minerals, but you'll find, how many of you know of a genetic weakness that you have either by your family history or by yourself, like a heart or lungs or something of that nature? How many are familiar with that? Well, Dr. Young has developed target products that go right there, electrically charged, consistent with that part of the body, so they go there. And they've used radioactive tracer studies to show that those particles literally are delivered to those organs. So he has a woman's pack, and there are several people on my team at Robbins Research who are very powerful women who are in their 40s and 50s. In fact, our company is run primarily by women. I'm one of the few token males. And it's a very powerful company. But these powerful ladies, when I started using these products, I knew, because I'm friends with them, of some of the changes they're going through in the change of life and their hormones. And what was amazing is about, 6 months ago, I came in and I went to an office meeting, a business meeting with all my executive team, and I look around and everybody's got their green drink. And I said, okay, are we brown-nosing today or what? And everybody started laughing. I said, no. I said, you guys really all drinking this? Why? Everybody went around the table and talked about what it had done for them, but 2 women said, it stopped my hot flashes. Because what happened was they not only took the green drink, but there's a women's product that's targeted for balancing women. And it's unbelievable. I haven't had a woman who's taken it who hasn't gotten significant changes. So I recommend women to go see him. And I've also seen the same changes for men in the prostate area. So if you know a genetic weakness, you want to provide those minerals or needs directly there. And you can do your own research, and Dr. Young's group will connect you with them. You've got A for women is alkalize. And N is provide the nutrition and diet, which we're going to talk about next. What that'll allow you to do is put your body back in balance. When it's in balance, your biochemistry is where it needs to be. The electrical charges are there. The cells are vibrant. They're alive. There's lots of what? Energy. And you start feeling good, being good. You think differently. You feel differently. Your skin changes. Everything shifts in your life when you put yourself back in balance. So how do you get in balance? Number 1 is what? Cleanse. Number 2 is break the pattern by taking control. And number 3 is provide what it is you need. Now, here's what we've done so far. We've freed ourselves, if we're intelligent at this stage, from fear. Because we understand things don't just attack us. We got to create an environment that feeds it. How many buy that? Say I. Two, we've identified specifically the foundation of this, which is getting out of balance because we create disturbances or we get an environment that disturbs our cells. They disorganize, they get an environment now that's compromised, they mutate, they respond. Those beings or those creatures create their own waste products, and those acids then continue the cycle till we get more and more unhealthy. We know to get balance, we gotta what? What's the first step? What? Cleanse. I want you to remember that because the way we're gonna live is one that's a cleansing lifestyle, not a clogging lifestyle. And we're gonna have that as part of our mindset. Second thing we're gonna do is gonna take control by interrupting patterns that don't serve us. And third thing is we're gonna provide the body with the core nutrients it needs, a good woman. I doubt if there's anyone who wants to argue everyone doesn't need a good woman in their life, right?